Perfect. Dante, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And I'm sure there'll be people joining in, over the next few minutes as well. But yeah, hello and welcome everyone to our webinar, where we're talking about strategies to maximize returns on Giving Tuesday this year. I'm Kalyan, co-founder and CEO at Almabase. Again, thank you for joining us today. It's the last day of October, last working day of October, in a year which has thrown everything at us, right? If there's one thing that inspired me this year, it is really the resilience that people have showed as the world has grappled with this pandemic, right? I mean, the work that you all have done at your own institutions over the last 6 to 8 months has been nothing short of inspirational. And honestly, that's what has kept us going at Almabase too, So before we got started with the agenda for today, I really just wanted to take that moment to take a pause and just applaud how all of us have reacted to this unprecedented year. So just take a moment to congratulate yourselves for such a like I said, an unprecedented year, and how we've all been able to get through this year so far. Fingers crossed for the next few months. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure most of you have attended Zoom webinars by now, but for those of you that haven't, I'm just going to quickly run through the logistics of how this will work really quickly. So all of you as attendees will be muted by default. Only the panelists, which is myself and Dante, will be unmuted. Feel free to ask questions anytime during the webinar. You don't have to hold your questions till the end. And to ask a question, just type it in on the chat below. We'll respond to the questions as soon as we're able to during the webinar. And then if there's a question that we need further clarification on, we'll be able to unmute you and let you explain the question. We'll also be sending you this slide deck that we're using at the end of the webinar, along with a recording of the session. So you can just sit back and listen in. And we have a live poll as well during the webinar. So I'd really encourage you to participate in that. That'll help us keep this as engaging as possible. And yeah, so logistics out of the way, I'm really excited to be joined by Dante Plush. He's the youth engagement lead at Giving Tuesday. Dante, welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I am super pumped.
Thank you for joining us. So yeah, I want to really get started with a brief story of how Almabase came together, because I think that sets the context for what we're going to be talking about as well. So that's me. I was born and raised in India, which is where I went to school as well. And like everybody else, I was super happy to be in college and enjoying every moment of it. But as it turns out, during my junior year, I had noticed that some of my classmates had to drop out because they couldn't afford their tuition fee anymore. That really disturbed me, and so a couple of friends and I were sort of sitting down and saying, how could we actually fix this? Because if they were to drop out of college midway, it would really sort of impact their career, right? So we came up with this really simple idea at that point, which was, hey, our college has 40,000 alumni. Why don't we reach out to them and raise money, right? So that's what we did. Actually, at that point, we started a nonprofit. Again, this was India. Alumni philanthropy was a very unknown concept, but we sort of just created this nonprofit. I guess ignorance is bliss in some cases, right? So we just went ahead, reached out to a bunch of alumni, and we said, hey, here's the problem. This is what's going on. Would you be able to fund scholarships for these students, right? So that's what we did. We essentially raised some money through those through that alumni funding. And even after, and we ended up actually raising enough money to ensure that none of our classmates dropped out that year. But even after we graduated and started working full-time jobs, we continued raising money and funded hundreds of scholarships over the next few years. But through that journey, we realized something very important, which is that the relationship between alumni and their alma mater was broken. I mean, not just at our institution, but at most educational institutions globally. And that's really what led to us creating Almabase. And we help universities and schools cultivate those meaningful, lifelong relationships with their alumni. right? And we've come a long way since then, since the beginning of Almabase, and we're today the world's most loved alumni management software, serving hundreds of institutions across more than 30 countries. A majority of them are here in the US. We work with universities and colleges, independent schools, public schools, and other nonprofits as well. While we've grown a lot, I think what hasn't changed for us is our mission. And our mission, even now, and what's going to be true even going forward, is that we want to help institutions make education more affordable to everyone by driving more participation from alumni. So that's a brief history of Almabase. And before we dive into the strategies and examples that we have lined up for you today, I want to actually just take a moment to understand where each of you are with respect to how you're planning Giving Tuesday this year. So I request each of you to use your phone or your computer, whatever is accessible, go to your browser, type in slido.com and enter 55444 as the code, and you'll see the question on your screen. Alternatively, you can also just open your phone's camera and scan the code that's here to be able to go to the page directly. And I see a few answers coming in. I'd request each of you to just let us know what you're planning for Giving Tuesday this year. Is this a fundraising campaign? Are you planning, a non-monetary campaign, or are you just not planning anything yet? What are you planning this year? So I see about 10 responses. Most of them are essentially planning a fundraising campaign. We've got a few that haven't planned anything yet. I see about 34 people on the webinar, so I'm guessing there's a few more responses coming in. A few of you are planning non-fundraising campaigns. That's interesting. So it looks like a majority of you are essentially planning fundraising campaigns this Giving Tuesday. So I think this webinar is actually going to be useful because we want to talk about how you can leverage Giving Tuesday for fundraising campaigns, but also beyond that, because Giving Tuesday is much more than about a day of fundraising. We're definitely going to cover more ideas and examples around that. All right, perfect. I'm going to move on. Thank you for participating in that poll. That's helpful. Just give me one moment. All right, perfect. So let's take a step back again, right? So what is Giving Tuesday? So Giving Tuesday is a global generosity movement, unleashing the power of people and organizations to transform their communities and the world. Right. And when you think about it, when it comes to Giving Tuesday, it's easy to think just about raising donations, right? And from the poll, we could clearly see that a lot of you are planning fundraising campaigns, but generosity comes in all shapes and forms. It isn't just money, right? Like ultimately, yes, raising donations helps advance the institution, but it's useful to think about leveraging Giving Tuesday more holistically, right? Your Giving Tuesday campaign ideally should be much more than fundraising. I mean, there are plenty of ways to create or activate campaigns that are not just about donations, right? And these campaigns can actually create engagement that will drive up donations again for your fundraising campaigns, right? And my co-host Dante is probably the best person in the world to talk about how you can engage your community with non-monetary campaigns on Giving Tuesday, right? So I'm going to hand it over to him here, and then come back later to talk about how you can maximize returns on your fundraising campaigns. So Dante, over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Kayan. Like Kayan said real quickly about me, my name is Dante Plush. I am the Director of Youth Engagement for Giving Tuesday Spark. I was a teacher. I taught in the Hood in the Bronx, and a lot of my students faced a lot of barriers to education that I personally didn't face growing up, and it makes succeeding, even though a lot of my students are bright, very difficult for them. So I took this work here at Giving Tuesday in hopes of being able to use generosity and giving and kind of the idea of change making as a way to empower young people in their communities, regardless of their socioeconomic status or whatnot, to be able to make a change in the world that they would like to see. So that's a little bit about me. Giving Tuesday Spark we started out as Giving Tuesday Kids back in 2019, way before I was in the Giving Tuesday sphere. It was started by a young lady who was 12. Her name is Chloe Thompson. She owns her own nonprofit called Chloe Cares. And she reached out to Giving Tuesday and she suggested, hey, us kids, we have stuff to offer too. How about you set up a Giving Tuesday program for kids? So they started Giving Tuesday Kids, and with only a couple months prep time, they ended up activating over 10,000 kids on Giving Tuesday last year around the world to activate, to do an act of generosity. And that was just with a couple months prep time, just right out the gate. So I came on and we decided we wanted to expand to also help push the goals of teens, college students, and young adults in addition to kids. So we rebranded to Giving Tuesday Spark. So I guess to kind of wrap it up in a nice bow for you all to understand what the heck Giving Tuesday Spark is. Giving Tuesday Spark is a global generosity movement that is almost entirely youth-led. We aim to provide kids, teens, young adults, and college students with the tools, the amplification, the megaphone, and the resources needed to lead the generosity and service initiatives that will help them make the changes in the world that they would like to see. And what's unique about our model is there are a lot of organizations out there that work with youth, but it's a lot of like, how do we get youth to fundraise for us? How do we get youth to do this for us? And here our model is, what do you, youth, what do you want to do? Tell us what you know. Tell us how we can support. We're going to rally behind you. We're going to give you the tools and resources. You are the expert. You know how to talk to your peers better than we do. And we're going to try to give you as many connections as we can. We're going to try to support you in this way. If there's a program that comes along, we think it, suits your goals and your missions, we'll throw it your way. And in that way, we are hoping to empower young people to make a change and be that seasoned individual that's ready to take the place of us in our positions, whether it be at Giving Tuesday or at your nonprofit. So because of that model that we have, it's very low barrier to access, which means we have kids regardless of race, religion, age, socioeconomic status, all kind of participating and showing that they have something to give. And that's why we place a big emphasis on non-monetary generosity. And we're going to talk about the importance of non-monetary generosity and how you also can use non-monetary generosity in your fundraising initiatives. So here's some examples. Already, we have the Sisters of Omega Phi Alpha. That's this big sorority that I worked with this year, earlier in May for Giving Tuesday Now. And this was right in the thick of COVID. The sisters are spread out across the country. They could not get together to do anything in public without it being dangerous. So they decided on Sister Bingo. And it's just a really, really, simple idea of, hey, once you get bingo, send it to us and we'll have a prize for you from our national council. And they used their hashtags along with Giving Tuesday Now. And they pushed not only their organization and kind of got themselves mixed up in the whole global movement that was Giving Tuesday Now. They, people saw their idea and they took it and they ran with it and they got partnerships out of it. And I think one thing that is a good example out of this is good outcomes from this is it was a way to, one, customize non-monetary generosity to meet your organization's needs. It's all blue and yellow. It's their colors. It's their symbols. Even though they're doing it for Giving Tuesday, it's still about them and their generosity. 2, no one was at risk. Everyone was safe. And 3, it got them that attention. They got, on that day, we literally outtrended Cinco de Mayo. Giving Tuesday Now outtrended Cinco de Mayo for most of the day. So to get in on that and get those partnerships out of it, great for them. Our next example, please, Mr. Callion. We have a high school teacher here who rallied her students together to participate in a campus cleanup. Wasn't expecting anything out of it. They got together and they decided to pick up trash. And I think what is noteworthy from this example that I hope that you, the audience, will take away from this is when you're trying to engage youth in whatever initiatives you're doing, teachers are it. Teachers spend more time, and I could say this because I was a teacher, teachers spend more time with children than the children spend with their parents. Teachers can influence the kids to get things done. A lot of students emulate their teachers. Even if their teachers are immature like me, they still emulate them. They want to be like their teachers. So teachers are very influential. You go for the teachers, you get access to that big old network of teachers. There are teachers, there are Facebook groups, there are, meetup groups where teachers just complaining about kids and the administration and not getting paid enough. But those networks are a perfect vehicle for you to be like, hey, my organization, we're doing this. Do you want to get your students involved? And then it spreads. They tell their teacher friends, they tell their administration, and it spreads. So please consider reaching out to teachers the next time you want to engage youth for your initiatives. Next, one of my legacy Spark leaders from our core group, Jaquil, he recently led a very impressive blessing bags virtual packing party where kids from across the country, about 160 kids across the country, simultaneously, virtually packed blessing bags in the safety of their own homes and then passed them out to people not expecting anything in return. And another one of my legacy Spark leaders, Logan, now that school's back in session, it depends on what school looks like in your area, but in Logan's school, she handed out hygiene kits. I don't think this is during school hours. I hope it's not, because her mask is not on her face, it's on her hand. But she passed out hygiene kits to kids in her school. So I guess what all these things have in common is that they were all done without asking of anything in return. These kids and these teachers, they went out and they did these things and there was no money involved. They weren't asking for anything. And this has gotten them all a lot of, I don't know how to put it. I feel like attention has a very bad connotation, but it got them exposure. People saw like, hey, you're actually passionate about this. You went out and you did something without asking for anything in return. And that is a true sign that someone's dedicated. And I think that if you, as the audience, tap into that, go out and start doing things that are nice, that have to do with like your mission or your overall goals, you're going to start developing a devoted like base of people who like you for the passion that you bring to your fight against whatever you're fighting against or whatever you're fighting for. And they're going to want to support you more so than someone who just pops up every couple of years and asks for money.
Absolutely. Thanks for those insights and examples, Dante. And I think your own experience as being a teacher is really, reflecting in the way you sort of explain these ideas, truly useful. Again, thank you for sharing those insights. And I hope that for each of you that are listening here, those examples inspire each of you to organize interesting non-monetary campaigns this Giving Tuesday. I obviously, a lot of you are organizing fundraising campaigns as well. So I do want to spend some time, talking about some of the best practices and examples to inspire your fundraising campaigns as well. And, at Almabase, I mean, we've had the opportunity to power hundreds of fundraising campaigns from various institutions over the years. And, thankfully, we're able to look into the data from all of those campaigns and really analyze and understand what are those key elements that have helped some campaigns be incredibly successful, and what do they do differently from the ones that aren't as successful, right? And it's really boiled down to 4 key factors that we've seen in terms of what differentiates the really successful campaigns against the ones that aren't as successful. Sorry, I do see a question. Oh, okay, that's not a question, sorry. So number 1, right, first and foremost, so days of giving, are all about participation, right? I mean, for most institutions, days of giving are not necessarily about, hey, let's just go raise 70% of our annual fund on the day, right? It's more about, hey, let's drive participation, right? Really important for institutions to think about, how they want to create a healthy sense of competition among their donors to really drive more participation, right? I mean, a classic example of this is always like a class leaderboard for alumni focused fundraising campaigns, right? Like, can you get classes to compete to sort of see which class will give the most or have the highest participation in terms of number of donors, right? Like you have the class of 76 competing against the class of 77 and sort of looking at, hey, which of these classes can rally the most number of donors, right? And it need not even just be about different classes, right? I mean, you can drive competition among, say, various athletic teams at your school or university. You can drive competition among departments. You can drive competition among chapters or any other units, really, right? Like, I mean, you obviously know what's best for your institution. But the point is that the campaigns that are able to drive the right kind of competition among donors end up doing really well, right? And I want to actually take an example here, right? So, Covenant Life School is an independent Christian school in Maryland. And so when they did their Giving Tuesday campaign a couple of years ago, they did a phenomenal job of, creating a friendly sense of competition among each grade, right? They're a K through 12 school. So they created a healthy sense of competition, among each grade to see who could raise the most funds for the school. So they created a leaderboard like this, that could motivate donors to contribute and help their group win, right? So you could see, the general sort of fund, and then the sixth grade, the fourth grade, and you could sort of look at, how many donors sort of came in from that group, right? So that's a good example of, creating a healthy sense of competition. So that's number one. And then number two, leveraging peer-to-peer influence. And what I mean by that is, in today's day and age, if you're just reaching out to your constituents via your own social channels or, email communication, text messaging, etc., but not really using their networks, you're really, leaving money on the table, I would say, right? Like, so to me, leveraging every supporter's network is really essential to drive more participation again, right? Like you have to communicate with your audience, but you have to also be able to tell them that, hey, for you to be able to help our campaign, our purpose, our cause, not just making a gift, but also by spreading the message further on social media and WhatsApp, text messages, wherever they can communicate. Dante, go ahead. You want to say something?
Right. I just want to add on to that. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. And just to let everyone know, based on like the research that our data team does at Giving Tuesday, the number one way that you grow involvement or you grow your network is literally asking people, because people can ignore, like they can ignore social media, like advertisements, they can ignore whatever. But if you ask someone like, hey, join me in doing this nice thing or supporting this nice cause, will you? They're going to look like a real jerk if they say no. So I support that for your monetary and your non-monetary initiatives. Number one way to get people to join in, ask them to be a part, ask them to activate their networks to be a part as well.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're communicating with your audience about your, campaign, again, whether it's monetary or non-monetary, you have to communicate that, hey, please help us by spreading the message on, with your networks, and make it easy for them to do so. Don't make it hard for them to be able to communicate, where to go make a gift or where to participate, things like that. Make it easy for them to be able to share with their networks, right? Because if you think about it, your audience, your email marketing, let's say you do postcards, your social media posts, etc., you're never going to be able to reach 100% of your audience, right? You may have lost alumni, you may have the wrong email addresses, you just may not have their addresses, but then they see, say a classmate talking about why they contributed to your campaign on social media, and now they want to participate too, right? So so peer-to-peer influence is really strong. And I think the point here is that if you aren't leveraging the networks of each of your supporters, then you're leaving money on the table, right? And I just want to take this example. My team here is an international, 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports post high school girls with medical conditions, right? And what they did on their campaign is that they educated their volunteers ahead of the campaign in terms of how they could use social media, and what they did on the campaign is, they are able to showcase the influence of each of these volunteers on the campaign page, right? So now each of these volunteers have the motivation to be able to share further and be able to spread the message, right? And by actually tapping into the social networks of each of these donors and volunteers, they were actually able to raise about 587 gifts on the day, which was well over their goal, right? So it's important to understand that you have to go beyond, just adding a Facebook share button, right? Like in a lot of cases, we do see that, like, people have that button which says share on Facebook, but I think you have to go beyond that and actually educate your donors, right? And you have to show them how much impact they have created for your organization to really be able to get this peer-to-peer influence going, right? Um, so that's point number two. And I think point number three is, your constituents need to understand why it's important to donate today, the day of giving, on Giving Tuesday. It's important to communicate that urgency and purpose, because you don't want them to think, okay, this is interesting, but I have the rest of the year to make my gift, or I have the rest of the year to contribute. It's all the same anyway, right? You don't want them to actually not have that sense of urgency, right? Because when someone's on your campaign page, they need to be able to see the urgency clearly. And one of the good ways in which a lot of campaigns do this is by creating challenge gifts, where you, let's say, get a pledge from donors to match other donors in creative ways, right? Like the most classic example of this is like a dollar to dollar, match kind of gift, right? You can say, someone will donate $5,000 if we hit 100 donors, or you can say someone will give $20,000 if we hit our goal for the day, right? Or you can say someone will match every dollar donated during a certain hour of the day, so all sorts of creative ways in which you can create that urgency, right? um, you can also use non-monetary challenges. Actually, that's the other, like, one of the best ideas I've seen recently is where a school had some of their professors, right, record videos and actually kept them logged, and then they said you can unlock these videos when certain milestones are hit during the day of the campaign, right? And those worked like a charm. I mean, everybody wanted to see those videos, right? So the idea is that when donors, see that their donation creates more impact than just their dollars, it actually creates a strong reason for them to donate and to do it now, right? And a great example of this was, Carnegie Mellon University's Giving Tuesday campaign last year. They provided I would say the right incentives to create urgency for their donors. And to be able to do that, what they did is they created plenty of matching gifts and challenges and ended up raising almost 5,000 donations on the day, right? Here are some of the examples, of some of the challenges that they had, done. And I wanted to share it here because this could be useful for ideas for your own campaign as well, right? They did like a dollar for dollar up to $100, and they had $100,000 in matching funds for undergraduate alumni, $25,000 for graduate alumni. Then they had a couple of families that provided $20,000 in matching funds, doubling gifts from parents of CMU students and alumni, right? And once they hit, the goal of 4,995 donors, they unlocked a special, $6,000 gift from someone, right? So again, different ways in which you can sort of create that urgency. I won't go through each of these, but hopefully that gives you some ideas and inspiration for some of the challenges that you can set up as well. And finally, after you do all the marketing, to bring people to your page and leverage the peer-to-peer influence and bring more people in, let's say you have a terrible donation experience. I mean, it sounds obvious, right? But if you don't create a simple, seamless donation experience, you lose a ton of donors. But surprisingly, I still see a lot of campaigns going wrong here, where they do all the marketing, bring people in, and then just because the experience is terrible, because we live in a one-click checkout age, right? I mean, we're all used to that. So you certainly need to ensure that your donations can be captured from any device in under 2 minutes, right? You need to keep it simple, provide a great donation experience. There are many examples where, I've seen people receive an email, they click on the link on their mobile phone, realize that the process is very long, and then they'll say, okay, I'm just going to do it when I get back home, right? And they'll never do it again, right? So you don't want to lose those donors. And that's why it's really important to create a very seamless donation experience. And I just wanted to share this example. The Albany Academies, they're actually an independent college prep set of schools in New York. And during their recent Giving Tuesday Now campaign earlier this year, they actually raised over $100,000 to support their students and faculty, right? again, well above their previous year. And one of the key things was how they made it really easy for their donors to give wherever they are in from any device, right? So that was I thought a great move from their side in terms of how simple they made their fundraising or donation experience, right? So yeah, those are the four key elements that you shouldn't miss out on if you're doing organizing a fundraising campaign this Giving Tuesday. I just want to reiterate: one, driving a healthy sense of competition; two, leveraging peer-to-peer influence to tap into your supporters' networks; three, create reasons to give now on the day of giving; and four, make it really easy to give, right, wherever your donors are. So I hope that was helpful. I just wanted to actually quickly also take you through a sample sort of giving day page, just to kind of understand, sort of explain the different elements that you can bring together to make an engaging experience for your donors, right? So, there's a page here with obviously a thermometer. You can see real-time progress as you go through the day. And this is an interesting aspect where as soon as someone makes a donation, they can actually key in who they've made that gift in honor of, and put in their picture. So this makes like a really lively feed throughout the day, right? And like I was saying, if you're able to track the influence of each of your donors and volunteers, you're able to then showcase it, because in this case you can clearly see that Jason has helped raise $1,800 here, or Doug has helped raise $3,900 here, right? And some of the interesting things that you can do on your campaign page is, in this case, Calvert Hall, what they did was they said, brother John was going to shave off his mustache for the first time after 1986 if they hit their fundraising goal, which was 1,170 donors, which was again an interesting way to create a challenge for people to donate on the day off, right? So I thought that was a really interesting, example as well. And then they also created leaderboards to be able to create that, again, that healthy sense of competition among their donors, right, where different classes were competing. And then they had, all sorts of challenges. They had gifts, they had videos that were being unlocked. So this was, again, an interesting way to incentivize your donors to make gifts on the day off. Just wanted to share that example as like some of the key elements that you could bring in onto your fundraising campaign page. But that's all I had. I'd love to take any other questions. If any of you have questions for me or for Dante, we'd love to take them now.
Can I also ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, hello audience, Dante here again. I remember we did, and you probably remember, we did a poll in the beginning of this presentation where Kalyan asked you your plans for Giving Tuesday. And correct me if I'm wrong, but over 80% of you said that you're going to be doing, right, let me move this window. 81% of the respondents to this poll said you're going to do a fundraising campaign. So my question to you is, if most of you are doing a fundraising campaign, what are you going to do to differentiate yourself from these other campaigns that are going to be fundraising?
Yeah, feel free to type out your answer on chat, or if you can just ping me on chat, I'm happy to unmute any of you if you want to speak as well. Right. And if there's any other questions, we're happy to take those now as well.
Totally, questions are cool.
Yeah, and I really hope that with some of the ideas that you shared, Dante, that some of the institutions or some of the people here that have mentioned that they were planning to do a fundraising campaign, do a fundraising campaign plus some non-monetary campaigns that drive engagement as well.
I hope so too. I mean, to everyone who's planning your fundraising campaign, next time you go about it, I want you to think about that one deadbeat friend who only like reaches out to you and they're like, hey, can I have some money? And then you're like, okay. And then like, you don't hear from them for like a year. And then they're like, hey, I know you haven't heard from me in a year, but can I have money again? And it's like, over time, you're just like, what is this? So I'm hoping that like your fundraising campaigns, of course, are very important, and you need to, or I suggest that you use non-monetary generosity to kind of garner that base, that foundation that sees you doing these things year round. You shouldn't, in my opinion, again, you shouldn't just be doing this on your giving day. year round, it's your goal to be fundraising to support your institutions. I think year round, you should be doing non-monetary generosity to be, gathering that base that is kind of loyal to you and wants to see what you're going to do next. They like the passion that you're putting in. They like what you're doing for them. They like what you're doing for the rest of the world without expecting anything. We're ready. We want to support you.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. There's one question from Danielle Tuck. What fundraising platforms do people use? We use QGive, and it is not simple. Discussed also using Facebook fundraising, pros or cons. Danielle, obviously, Almabase provides a fundraising platform as well, but there's plenty of them out there. And we do have actually some material on comparisons between different fundraising platforms. So I'd be happy to share that with you after the webinar. So if you wouldn't mind reaching out to us with that question, we'll be happy to share more information for you. All right, there's a question here from Lydia. My organization is trying to leverage both peer-to-peer motivation and urgency by getting our young alumni committee to pledge $2,000 if we hit our goal on the day. Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's a great way to motivate people to make donations on the day off. Yeah.
So walk me through that real quick, Kalyan. So the idea is to get the Young Alumni Committee to pledge 2,000 if they hit their goal.
Yeah. So what happens is if you're able to hit your goal, you automatically unlock another $2,000. So for the donors that are sort of making their gifts, that's an additional motivation because you're not only just making, let's say, a $10 gift, but you're also saying, hey, by making that $10 gift, we're getting closer to unlocking that $2,000 as well.
Okay, it's like incentivizing them, like, hey, give so we can get these extra dollars. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea, Lydia. Perfect. I don't think there are any additional questions. I know it's Friday. I know it's already afternoon on the East Coast. So I'm sure a lot of you will want to head close to the weekend. Actually, there's a question here from Leslie Shivamber. We're asking alumni to donate in honor of a particular teacher, and we will use those names to create a teacher honor roll. That's awesome.
Like the names of the people who donate in the honor of this teacher, they'll be put on this honor roll. Is that kind of how it works?
That's what it sounds like. So essentially every donor can sort of say, I'm donating in honor of a particular teacher, right? Say Professor Dante, right? And then they'll create an honor roll from that, which is a very interesting way to create engagement with the teachers as well. Yeah, that's a great idea, Leslie. Thank you for sharing that.
Creative.
Yeah. Awesome, excellent. I think we'll wrap up with that. We'll share both Dante and I our email IDs as well with each of you at the end of the webinar, along with the recording and the slides. So feel free to reach out to us if there's anything else that we can be helpful with. And again, Dante, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you very much, everyone in the audience, for these cool ideas. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend. Thank you.